Okay, so as you can see, the title over here is Sichos HaRan 96a, and the reason being that Sichos HaRan Tzadivav 96 is fairly lengthy. I did not think we would get through the whole thing today, and so we're going to try to get through as much as we can of the first segment, which itself is pretty sizable, as well as seeing a teaching from Reb Nassan and Likutei Halachos that will help us to further deepen our understanding of what Rabbi Nachman is revealing to us here. And then, as Hashem, next week, I guess we'll get into the second, maybe even the second and third part or parts of the Sicha. Okay, so let's jump in together, taking a look at the beginning of Sichos HaRan 96, all b'siyata d'shmaya, and again with expressing tremendous gratitude to each and every one of you for being here and for learning with me and for learning with all of us. Says the Heilige Rebbe, Schusa Yagin Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael Amen. A person should know that Roi la'adam lahargel es atzmei liyas ba'olam haba, that it is fitting for a person lahargil es atzmei lashon regilus, to get used to doing something, lahargil es atzmei, to accustom oneself, lihiyais ba'olam haba, to already be in Olam Haba, in the world to come. Dahainu, what does that mean? A person should get himself accustomed to being in Olam Haba. We're not in Olam Haba, we're living very much in Olam Hazeh. And when I say very much, that's with the realization that we're coming to the tail end of the experience of the Sheishes Alafim Shan, of the 6,000 year, the 6 millennia time period before we get into the Yemais HaMashiach, which is the 7th millennia, the concept of Yom HaShabbos, which is going to be followed by this concept of Olam Haba, with differences among the Rishonim of what exactly that's going to be. But regardless, very much so, we're living in Olam Hazeh. So what does this mean? Ro'i la'adam lahargelas atzmai. It's fitting for a person to accustom him or herself lihiyos, and this word to be ba'olam haba, in the world to come. So Rabbi Nachman says over here, the hainu, what this means is liyos mufresh mitaivos, is to be a person that, again, each and every one of us, in relation to what our nekudas habachira is, which Reb Dessler speaks about at length, and I believe it's founded on a teaching in Rabbi Nachman, Likutei Moharan Samach, Ayin Beis, the 72nd teaching in Likutei Moharan. Rabbi Nachman already hints to this topic of there being varied levels of Yetzer Hara that proceed as a person rises from one spiritual level to the next spiritual level. So Reb Dessler makes it clear, each and every one of us have our nekudas habachira. We have our point in the battlefield where if we choose correctly, we can move this amount, and Be'ezras Hashem, we can work on whatever we need to work on, wherever our front lines are, as it were. So each and every one of us, in accordance with where we are on our own spiritual journey, we have the opportunity to work on being what Rabbi Nachman refers to over here as mufresh mitaivos, separated, removed from tavot, from desires. K'moi ba'olam haba, and this, says Rabbi Nachman, is what we refer to as lihiyos ba'olam haba, what it means to be in Olam Haba. We're going to suggest an alternative explanation or a deeper level of this in a minute. But liyos ba'olam haba, to be a person who is in Olam Haba, is a person that is removed from the draw toward taivos, toward this worldly physical experiences, pleasures, escapes. And this, says Rabbi Nachman, so what does that have to do with Olam Haba? Because this is how Chazal describe what Olam Haba will be. Olam Haba, as the Gemara in Brachas tells us, She'im b'lo yachila b'lo shia, b'lo yishem taivim taivos habahamias, hakalos v'nefsadeh shala olam hazeh. That Olam Haba, in as much as we have no idea what it means, because it's fundamentally beyond our current experience as humans, and that's what Chazal attribute the pasuk, Ayin loy rasa elehim zulasecha, that no eye has seen, certainly no human eye can conceive of what Olam Haba is going to be like. And Rabbi Nachman is going to give us a little bit of a taste of some of what exists in the Olam Ha'Elyonim, but we certainly cannot grasp it. But whatever it will be, ayin loy rasa elikim zulasecha, which only Hashem, so to speak, understands the extent of the pleasure and the nature of the experience that all of us are, Be'ezras Hashem, going to be experiencing. But certainly one thing we know for sure is that lo yachila, there's no eating, lo yishasiya, there's no drinking, v'shem taiva mitavas abahamias, hakolos v'nefsades, anything that's fleeting, any experience that's fundamentally connected to that which lasts momentarily and then is gone. Shal Olam Hazeh, which is the which is the nature of all of this worldly pleasures. So Olam Haba doesn't contain any of that. And so, says Rebbe Nachman, to the extent that a person is able to remove oneself from being bound with those attractions, with those draws, and a person is able to subside in this world without feeling the need to be compelled into those experiences, and this is a lifelong avodah that all of us, again, in accordance with our nekudas habachira, where we are along our journey, which is precisely where we're supposed to be, as we're going to learn in a minute, and we're going to see in a second how Rabbi Nachman sort of cushions this feeling. But a person needs to be able to try, to the extent possible, to overcome the draw, the attraction to this worldly pleasures. Each of us in our own way, that this should be something that we focus on. And there's a degree to which this is basically an underlying element that sort of serves as the foundation for all mitzvahs lo yisaseh, that in one way or another all relate to helping a person through an experience of Olam Hazeh that enables them to overcome the natural base animalistic attraction to the all of this worldliness, which is still how we refer to people who unfortunately aren't as privileged to have the sense for the sweetness of the Torah. The terminology that, at least, I don't know today so much, but was used in previous generations is frei, which is the German Yiddish word for free. The perception of being able to do whatever one wants, when and wherever one wants, however one wants, and so on and so forth. So, on a very basic level, eating kosher is a guided experience of the capacity for eating, which basically means you cannot eat everything. And so even the basics of Torah is to help a person to overcome those experiences. Hilchas Nida, for example, or generally the context of Arayos within the holy relationship of Kedushin, Lashon Kadosh, right? In that hallowed relationship to the exclusion of all other experiences. And then again, intra-relationship, the concept of Nida, which Bigadol on a national level we're experiencing now, so to speak, as we move through the 7 weeks, which are between the Yamim Tovim of Pesach and Shavuos, which the tzaddikim say are connected to the concept of the 7 days, the 7 clean days, the 7 days that are counted within the Nida experience. But regardless, there's an essential experience of limitation, being held back from our natural base desire to experience the full range of possibility within Olam Hazeh. That's literally what the Torah is for. But then, one of the very powerful ideas, ethics, so to speak, of the Torah is this concept.
Okay, so let's.
I'm sorry about that. Is the concept rather of Kaddish Atzmecha b'muterlach. Kaddish Atzmecha b'muterlach means that even in the things that are mutter, there's a concept, Kaddish Atzmecha b'muterlach. Do I really need that? Do I really need that now? And I want to point out that it's lav dafka. Some people feel that until a person attains perfection in the areas that are like sort of obligatory, right, which are the regular loisases of the Torah that are seeking to guide us through a more contained experience of Olam Hazeh. So then a person thinks to themselves, I should work on those things that are mutter and hold myself back. It's like halavai, that a person should be able to keep the things that quote unquote need to be kept. Halavai, that a person should align themselves with the vision of the Torah that guides us through the minefield of Olam Hazeh in terms of what's allowed and what's not allowed. That a person then should go ahead and to start experiencing what would appear to be much higher madrigas of Kaddish Atzmecha b'muterlach. And in my humble opinion, I think that it's a mistaken notion. Because who's to say what our neshama needs to rectify and how it needs to rectify what it needs to rectify? It's not up to us to make calculations. Of course, we try in the aspect of Asay Tov, in the aspect of all the mitzvahs, maisias that we can experience, and then there's Sur Meirah from all the things that we're trying to avoid. But any degree of Asay Tov and any degree of Sur Meirah, even though they might be seen as secondary to the things that we ought to be focusing on, the actual mitzvahs that we should be striving for. So who cares, a little chesed here, a little nice compliment there. If I'm not nice to all the people 100% of the time, so then a tiny experience of goodwill that all of a sudden a person has the feeling inside of their heart that to this one person at this one moment in time that they want to go above and beyond to be compassionate toward, and there's this voice in the back of the head that says, like, what's it worth if it's not within the broader context? And the answer is that time is completely an illusion. Yesterday is gone, tomorrow isn't here yet. All we have is this moment. And so if in any given moment a person feels a desire to embody this that Rebbe Nachman is telling us, lios mufresh mitaivos, that a person thinks, again, even though they know what they did yesterday and they know if in an honest moment what they're still struggling with, which might be much more serious and much more intense, and that they're going to grapple with tomorrow and the next day. But if in this moment a person can feel within themselves a desire and an ability to move 1 inch away from the realm of tumah, of animalistic, egoistic slumber, where we're not aware of Hashem, and to move, again, 1 little inch toward the direction of wakefulness, toward the direction of consciousness, toward the direction of emunah, of recognizing that we are at Tselem Elokim, of aligning ourselves with our higher identity, with our higher purpose. Adam, not seen as being what's called afar min adama, like the Shlach Kaddish says, earth, very lowly, base, dirty element, but rather Adam is Adam Elyon, that a person should see themselves as being reflective, or at least potentially reflective, of the tselem of Hashem Kiviyachal. So then take that opportunity. Take that opportunity, because we never know. It's not about, will I be able to hold on to this madriga forever? And then the voice of cynicism, like, who do you think you are to be holding on this madriga? Makes no difference. This moment, maybe we came down to this world for our whole lifetime. What do we know? Just for this moment to do the thing that we're able to do now in this moment. Not to finish all the food on our plate if it's not completely necessary, let's say. Not to take another piece of whatever it is that we want to take a piece. All of this stuff, even though, again, halavai, that we should be holding by the basics to then focus on precious, that's not a cheshbon. The cheshbon is, what's in front of me this moment, what can I do in order to move myself away from the experience of Olam Hazeh and to begin to enable myself to taste a little bit of the light of Olam Haba, which we channel into our lives in direct proportion with how much we're exercising our Tselem Elokim, our humanity, which is uniquely defined by our capacity, which is lacked by the animal kingdom, our capacity to choose meaningfully, to choose to overcome, to make decisions that are rooted in the broader picture rather than what the moment is offering us. So that's what Rebbe Nachman says on a very basic level. Dahainu liyos mufresh mitayves kamay ba'olam haba, liyos she'ein b'y lo yachila v'lo yishasiya v'shum tayva mitayves habahamias hakalos v'nifsada shel olam hazeh. That's what it means for a person to get themselves used to, lahargil, to accustom as atzmai, liyos ba'olam haba. Already in this world, that a little bit a person's living in that world to come. They're channeling into their lives an experience that's beyond the current reality that we exist in. So that's the simple way of reading that sentence, and that's really what Rebbe Nachman means to say over here, or Rebbe Nassan is transcribing from Rebbe Nachman's writings. But I just want to point out just one tiny little nakuda. If you take a look at the first sentence, the beginning of the first sentence, da, says Rebbe Nachman, ra'ui la'adam lahargalas atzmai. Again, that word lihiyos ba'olam haba. So I want to focus just on that word. Rebbe Nachman doesn't say it's fitting for a person to connect himself, l'chaber la'olam haba, or for a person to taste l'ta'om me olam haba in this world. this word is used specifically, lihiyos ba'olam haba, to be in Olam Haba. And I was thinking, what sits at the root of our connection to taivos, to attractions of this worldly sensation? Whether it's food, drink, all other aspects of the physical body being able to experience pleasurable sensations in this world, what sits at the core of these experiences? Beyond of course, the natural necessity a person needs to eat. What can you do? A person needs to drink. So tzaddik, oichel is by anafsha, as the pasuk says, that tzaddik eats just to sustain the soul. But over here we're speaking about extra, right? Moisarais. Those things that are extraneous, those things that are not absolutely necessary. Those things that are in the realm of what's called the klipas in the deeper Sfarim, the shells, which are described as shells because they're external, meaning they're extraneous. They're not the thing itself. And what sits at the core of what it is to be a Jew is always to have our focus on the thing itself, the nekuda ha'emtza. Right? And that's why Am Yisrael are the mate, as we're learning in our Thursday night Shabbos shirim of Shabbos Kodesh. Because Shabbos is the emtza. Shabbos is the tachlis maaseh shemayim va'aretz. Is the purpose. It is the fundamental point for which all of creation was formed. Malchus, right? That final receptacle, that final experience of manifestation, or seen in a different model, Shabbos sitting right in the center of the 6 days of the week, with 3 days from from Wednesday, Thursday, Friday to Shabbos, right? 3 days before it, and then Sunday, Monday, Tuesday afterwards. Shabbos is the center point. Am Yisrael is always about the center, the tachlis, not to take our mind off of it. So this is the aspect of the klipos, right? Which surround from without. They're extra. And that's why, just al pi Kabbalah, generally speaking, nails are seen as being something that should be cut, should be cut short. And when we do cut the nails, there's an aspect of tumah, right, where we're very careful to always brush the nails and to throw them out, that chas v'shalom they shouldn't be left around, that a person should step on them. And there's this concept, right, at least in earlier generations, that if chas v'shalom a pregnant woman would step on those nails, it can cause terrible consequences, as well as hair, at least for men. Woman is a separate thing. But at least for men, the concept of longer hair, which of course sphere is a separate cheshbon, and the Svarim explain why Kabbalistically during this time of sphere dafka we don't cut our hair. But generally speaking, by the Hasidim, they were very makbid to cut the hair short. Not, it doesn't have to be super duper short, but shorter. And the reason being because both hair and nails are seen as being extraneous to the fundamental functioning of the body. They're not necessary. Right? A person can function without long hair. There are some teenagers who don't believe that yet, but it's true, right? I'll never forget when I was 18 years old and my mom just took the shaver and I gave myself a big upshare, and I had a bit longer hair back then. Aside from just the ease of maintenance, like I didn't have to wake up and gel my hair and spend all that time in front of the mirror. It was like a running joke in yeshiva, so it saved me so much time. It was so much easier. It was so much more comfortable to sleep and to put tefillin on for sure. And it's obviously halachically preferable. But these things are not, your life doesn't depend on them. Not nails and not hair. And so al pi Kabbalah, al pi Pnimius, which is rooted in this very deep understanding, these things have the ruach ra. Right? They're connected to a spirit of impurity. Why? Because again, they are rooted in that realm of the extra. And anything that's extra is in the realm of the klipas, in the realm of Maisara. So that's what we're speaking about here, the extra taivas. So what sits at the root of that? What sits at the root of that fundamentally is the perception that what is now is not enough. That right now I lack something. And if right now I lack something, so I'm always seeking to fill it. And not just to fill it because a person's hungry. So what can a person do? They happen not to have eaten lunch, and so they're feeling hungry. So they need to go and get a meal, and that's okay. That's normal, obviously. But the extra stuff, when a person has the need to eat outside of mealtime, so to speak, when a person has the need, and everyone knows that this is not something that my body relies on. What's going on inside of the person is that something's missing. Something's missing. There's a sense of a void, and we convince ourselves foolishly, maybe even a revelation of a kind of insanity within our inner being, as Chazal call it, a ruach shtus, time and time and time again, that this time we're gonna manage for sure to fill that lack that we feel, that fundamental void, with physical experiences. And again, whether it's eating, whether it's drinking, different kinds of addictions, different kinds of spiritual experiences, hard addicts, soft addicts, it's all fundamentally it is all a form of addiction, right? And it's just addiction is a spectrum. To be human is to be an addict. We are naturally drawn towards certain things. And the word addiction is really, in its makar, the word addict in its earliest form means to be connected to in a way that we cannot break away from. Addict is to connect to things. That's what it means to be addicted to. That's its root. And so all the while that we depend on something, even if it's not, again, the way that we, culturally consider addiction is not destroying our lives and we don't now have to go to meetings and whatever it is, but if there's something that we can't break away from, whatever it is, that's an addiction. And so in this sense, we convince ourselves this is what we need. But the truth is that it speaks to a more fundamental sense of dis-ease, the incapacity to sit with what is in the moment, the need to change something, the need to get something that right now isn't had. So I think that it's very precise when we look at the wording of Rabbi Nachman, when he's speaking over here of breaking away from the Olam Haba experience, so to speak, of physical pleasure, which draws us down into the Gashmi, into the animal, into the less conscious, the less human, which again to be the fundamental distinction between humanity and the animal kingdom is our capacity to grow, to elevate. So the word that Rabbi Nachman is using over here to describe the opposite of that experience, Olam Haba, to begin to channel the light of paradise, to begin to channel the light of God consciousness, that time when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is completely revealed, Le'ikanev oid marecha, all the psukim that speak about that time of Olam Haba, where everybody will just sit and bask, like Chazal say in that same Gemara in Brachas, tzadikim yoshvim ve'atreseim b'reshem ne'enim miziv hashchina, just to bask in the glowing rays of divinity, which we don't even know what that is. So in describing that experience, look at the word that Rabbi Nachman uses. Ra'ui ala adam lahargil es atzmai, a person should accustom themselves lihiyos, which means to be. And then, liyos ba'olam haba, right? And that means to channel the experience of Olam Haba. But it's like you can put a full stop, you can put a period after the word lihiyos. Ra'oi la'adam lahargelas atzmai lihiyos. A person must accustom oneself to learn the secret of simply being, which might even mean to sit with discomfort, and that's okay. Lihiyos, simply to embrace what is in the current moment, unpleasant feelings that I need something, feelings of boredom sometimes can also give rise to unnecessary indulgence, unnecessary excesses. Ra'oi la'adam lahargel atzmai, and it's a muscle. It's a muscle. Maybe it takes a lifetime to get there. I'm certainly nowhere near any of this. Again, I have to clarify, anytime we're learning these things, I'm just learning them for myself. Chas v'shalom, don't get the impression that I'm like lecturing anybody or speaking about madrigas that I've reached. We're journeying together. That's what makes this chabur so wonderful. So I imagine that it takes a very long time. But the chizuk is, lahargel es atzmai means that we can grow accustomed to it in real time, building this muscle step after step, circumstance by circumstance. No matter where you are in the world, I don't know how many chevra are here on the Zoom, other people on Facebook, people are going to be listening to this, Be'ezus Hashem, after the shir is posted. Whether you're at the end of your day or your day is just beginning or whatever it is, you are going to experience, and I don't, I'm not saying this as like I'm not cursing anybody with this, but it's just a fact. Everyone here either has experienced today or will experience today unpleasantness. Challenges of one kind or another, each and every one of us, with the whole tapestry of all the different circumstances that make up the unique universe that is each and every one of us. Unpleasantness. And says Rebbe Nachman, those are opportunities. Let's read these words again. Lahargil es atzmai lihiyos. Those are opportunities to strengthen the being muscle. I don't need to get up and do. I don't need to quick, jump up and have and take something and try to change. Lihiyos. It's okay. It's okay. Nobody died from not having that extra piece of, whatever it is. No one died from that, unless, again, if it's a thing that a person needs, a different story. But maisarais, that's what it means. They're extraneous. We don't need them. We don't need them. And we become convinced in our culture that, what's going to be if we don't have, nothing will be. Not only that, it'll be mamish, liyas, what's the next two words? But Olam Haba. We'll channel a spirit of well-being that far exceeds whatever pleasure we thought we gained by grabbing. That's how we channel the spirit of Olam Haba down into our lives. Now, this is a tremendous struggle, a tremendous challenge. This is much easier said than done, like almost everything we say. But at the same time, it's good to keep this in mind, because this is a very practical thing that we can actually put into practice. Again, just for one last time, Ra'i la'adam lahargil es atzmai lihiyos. Okay. Let's go a little bit weiter. Reading further, like we see in a person Nebuch who's sick, who's ill, as the person gets closer and closer and closer to leaving this world, we hope that every person should have a refuah shalema, particularly our soldiers, that everybody who's being moiser nefesh on behalf of Am Yisrael in one way or another, everybody should have a refuah shalema bakar of mamish. A person who's toward the end of their life, so as they get closer and closer to Olam Haba, the person loses appetite. They have no natural desire for physical pleasure. They don't have the strength for it. They don't have the interest in it. They don't have any kind of appetite for that kind of thing. Adarabba, kol ha'taivas katzim u'usim. They can't even imagine eating. It's disgusting. Why, says the Rebbe? Because a person that's gravely ill, their neshama is about to leave their body. So their neshama is less attached to the Olam Hazeh experience of fleeting pleasures. And so that person is closer to that experience of Olam Haba where there's none of this. There's no eating, there's no drinking, again, like we said earlier from the Gemara in Brachas. So we should all be well. A person shouldn't need to get sick to experience this. We can already start in small ways, taking small steps, big madrega, but small steps to slowly but surely curtail our need to feel all the time like we need to grab excess taiva. While we're in the pinnacle of our strength in this world, and in good health, that a person is just a person says, I don't live with taiva. I'm not going to allow myself to be dragged into that. Does that mean that there's never a time where a person can't enjoy themselves? On the contrary, the Baal Shem Tov is all about that. Aliyas nitzotzos in a holy way, basar v'yayin, in the context of a simcha, the context of a sudas mitzvah, in the context of strengthening familial bonds, whether it's a date night with a spouse or going out with a good friend. Like, all these are okay experiences, that's fine. But as a status quo, a person puts a stake in the ground. Well, I don't mean an actual stake, although that is relevant to our conversation. A person stakes their position and says, I'm not I'm not. I don't need to be mitnaheg b'taivas, meaning that's not my status quo. I'm not a person who needs all the time to grab. A person can get to a place where they've accustomed themselves lihiyot. I'm okay with what is. So that means that a person never experiences unpleasantness and challenge. So wow, it must be so easy for such a person. No. A person doesn't experience everything flowing fine. But to such a person, that's okay. They never expected anything different. That's fine. They've accustomed themselves to allow unpleasant experiences to be felt without jumping to change. Certainly without jumping to change it in a way that they know deep inside their heart isn't actually going to make the situation better. On the contrary, might contribute to it being even worse. That's Rebbe Nachman's mashal that we learned in the beginning of Sichos HaRan Ois Vav, with the Yetzer Hara running in the marketplace with his fist closed like he has the greatest treasure in the world, and everyone runs after him, and then he opens his hand and klum. There's nothing there. Nothing there. And so how much wasted time and how much wasted effort and energy. It's avoidable, and it's not even this that we have to trust someone telling us of some experience that we haven't experienced. It's a crazy shigayon. It's the experience that we have had again and again and again and again and again and again, thinking that this time is going to be different. I mean, how insane could we be? But that's the human condition, and that's normal, and that's what the Gemara tells us. Ein adam over avera. No person would ever sin. Ela imkein nichnas by ruach shtus. There is quite literally a spirit of insanity that goes into a person to make them forget that they're not going to gain anything from this. From attempting to change their circumstances and get out of unpleasantness in the way that they're attempting to do that, which is through this worldly experiences, it's not going to work. They're not going to get anything from that. It's going to make things worse. That's the ruach shtus. It's incredible if you take a second to contemplate the power of the Yetzer Hara is absolutely phenomenal. Otherwise, says the Gemara, no one would ever do an avera. Because we'd remember, like, this is just not worth it. How many times does a person need to stick their hand into fire for them to finally think, oh, maybe it's not a good idea to do that again? I mean, you've been burned 1,000 times. And this is literally, it's not even a mashal, it's worse than getting burned in a fire. Because getting burned in a fire is just for a minute. And then a person heals. But what we do to our neshamas, through all of the excess experiences, is far worse than sticking our hand into a fire. In terms of the toll that it takes emotionally, the toll that it takes spiritually, the toll that it takes intellectually, the toll that it takes ethically, morally, each person and what their experience of excess is far worse than sticking our hand into fire. And forget about Olam Haba, forget about like Gan Eden Gehenna. I'm speaking about in this world. The antithesis of the aspect of Ashrecha, says the Mishnah in Perkei Avos, Ba'olam Hazeh, right? That the Torah is meant to guide us to the best life in this world, and how much we lose when we continue to stick our hand into that fire. And it's not like the next time we think to ourselves, oh, like that was really horrible, I shouldn't do that again. It's just not. It's not even a thought. Maybe for a glimmer of a second, but the ruach shtus is that strong. The ruach shtus is mamish that strong. It's a pele. It's really a wonder, right? So the ikr is not simply to work on, avoiding the Yetzer Hara, but the work begins before that. The expectation of life being unpleasant at times, and deciding in our hearts and souls and our minds that we're okay. We're okay with that. As long as it's not going to kill me, especially the extra stuff. Okay, I can sit with it. Like we said, Roy lahargil adam esatzmai lihiyos. And in so doing, we channel Olam Haba. Kain yesh la adam lahargil atzmai ba'odah b'chaim chiyusei b'riusei. Again, shia yachlis nai b'lei tavis kamoi ba'olam haba. That this is how we get ourselves accustomed to this. And says Rabbi Nachman, and here he's going to say a side thing, ubevadai amoy nisker b'toiv zikarein. If a person would remember what they themselves experienced of the pleasures of Olam Haba, he said, aside from everything else, we wouldn't even consider this worldly pleasures to be pleasurable in any way, shape, or form. It wouldn't even be enticing in relation to what exists in the higher realms. We have to thank Hashem for making it so that our neshamas have forgotten what our own neshamas already experienced in the higher realms. Even though to forget is not a good thing. We want to stay conscious. Zikaron is such a holy thing to remember. Shikha, forgetfulness, comes from the breaking of the luchas, which is very deep, which is the concept of disparity, separateness, multiplicity, shvira, brokenness. And zikaron is all about fixing. It is all about rectification, is all about unity. And that's why the day of Rosh Hashanah is called the day of zikaron. So remembering is so important. Yom HaZikaron, right? Remembering is so important. Zichron Shruas Rosh Hashanah, when we remember that this whole world with all the billions and trillions and gazillion, I don't know if that's an actual number, all the different parts and elements in every single aspect, Av Echad L'Kulana. Hashem is the Kol Yachal, the Koilam Yachad. He's the one that, in His light, the Echad Yachid Umiyuchad Ein Oidam Avadai, unifies everything. So that's the opposite of Shikha. That's Zikaron. So Avshi Midaloi Toiva, even though Shikha is a terrible thing, forgetfulness is a terrible thing, Im Kol Zehi Mala, but it's a very high thing. It's an important thing. Shal Yada Efshala Adam Lichiyos Ba'olam Hazeh, because without this kind of forgetfulness, says the Rebbe, we couldn't even live. We wouldn't be able to handle ourselves. We would be so ashamed of the lowliness of the human condition vis-a-vis higher beings living on higher planes of existence. We wouldn't be able to handle ourselves at all. People formed out of earth, afar min adama, drawn, like I was hinting to before, by virtue of the ruach shtus toward lowly, fleeting things. If we would think about the tainug of Olam Haba and remember what that is, we wouldn't be interested in anything. But more than that, we wouldn't be interested in carrying on living, chas v'shalom, because we would think, like, what's the point? And here he gives a very pointed example. It's one of the strangest. It's one of the strangest passages in Kisvei Rebbe Nachman, of which there are many, many, many strange passages. Listen to this one. And it's based on a Shloah HaKadosh who bases himself on a Tikkunei Zohar, but Rebbe Nachman takes it much further than the Shloah HaKadosh takes it. And here Rebbe Nachman says, if a person would remember what exists in the higher, loftier realms, he would remember Ki Yesh Malach Gadol Ma'od. There is a tremendous, tremendous Malach, which we have been sort of corrupted by the cultural representations of angels. We think that they're, like cherubic figures with wings and and everything like that. We have no concept of what a Malach is. A Malach is not a human with wings. A Malach is, we have no conception of what an angel means. What that is. It's completely beyond us. So everything we're going to describe now about this angel certainly doesn't mean physically. We have no idea what this actually means, but just bear with it. Even just on the what we can relate to, it's mind-blowing. Ki yesh malach gadol ma'od, says Rebbe Nachman, there is a tremendous angel, sheyesh le elef rashim, that has 1,000 heads. 1,000 heads. V'chol roish, and each head of this angel, yesh like elef l'shonos, it has 1,000 mouths, 1,000 tongues. So that's 1,000 times 1,000. V'chol lashon, and each of these mouths, yesh like elef koilos, produces 1,000 voices. That's 1,000 times 1,000 times 1,000. So 1,000 heads, each head has 1,000 mouths, each mouth produces 1,000 voices. V'chol kol yesh le elef nigunim. And each of those voices produces, at the very same time, concurrently 1,000 songs. If you do the math, and I admit to having used a calculator for this, 1,000 heads times 1,000 tongues or mouths times 1,000 voices times 1,000 songs is 1 trillion nigunim, 1 trillion songs. And this is one angel. Our minds can't even grasp what this means. What does that mean? 1 trillion songs being sung concurrently in harmony? Well beyond anything that the human being can produce. Even today with technology, 1 trillion? We have no vessel for 1 billion, let alone 1 trillion. So says the Rebbe, when this malach with 1,000 heads, each of which has 1,000 tongues, each of which has 1,000 voices, each of which sings 1,000 nigunim, stands up l'shorer to sing to Hashem. Says Rabbi Nachman, bevadai yafev v'noim ha'oid. Certainly this song that it sings is precious and beautiful and pleasant, asher ein laharach l'shar klal, that we can't even imagine the tainug of being able to experience that. V'ata yizkar adam atzmai pchisus v'shiflus erka neged zeh. If a person would remember this malach, and a person would then reflect on, like, well, I only have 1 head, and that head only has 1 mouth with 1 voice, and maybe from time to time, we can carry a tune, you know what I'm saying? Like, ve'ech yuchel lispal chayav. And I think that my hallel is a hallel. I think that my singing to Hashem is a singing. Like, in relation to 1 trillion songs produced by 1 being, by 1 entity, we wouldn't be able to carry on living. It's a joke. It's beyond a joke. It's a sad joke. We would grow disgusted with our lives. We would just give up. We would give up. If a person would remember our lowliness, how much we're dirtied by our lowlier experiences. If a person wouldn't forget, we would never be able to stand up before Hashem, keeping in mind all the different things that we have yet to rectify. Says the Rebbe, it's good. Forgetting is good. Forgetting enables us to detach from what exists in the loftier realms, so that, number one, we could value our avoda, even though in relation to the higher strata of existence, it's nothing and less than nothing. But within our own relative framework, it's very precious. It's the most precious thing that Hashem gets from the Olam Haba. And remember, Hashem didn't create all the worlds for the realm of the Malachim. They all exist because of us. The whole purpose is Shabbos, which is Malchus, which is the Olam Haba, right? And that's the point, right? That's the point. So that's why Shikha, number one, is valuable in that sense, and it's also valuable so that we don't lug around all of our spiritual baggage every minute of every day. We can move on from things. We can put things away and carry on. There's a time for tshuva, and then says Rebbe Nachman, the rest of the day has to be b'simcha, as we learned in a previous Sicha from Sichos HaRan. Perhaps most importantly, when Rebbe Nachman is speaking about the difficulty of pulling away from taivas olam hazeh, to train ourselves lihiyos, like we learned, right? To train ourselves to simply be, and in so doing to channel the energy of Olam Haba, which is the realm of beingness, where there's no eating and no drinking and no trying to seek. It's just experiencing what is. and basking in the light of that, basking in that light. So to give us chizuk, Rabbi Nachman says, it's true, Ein Chanami. There are malachim that are so perfect, that are so exalted, that are beyond anything that we can dream of. So in making reference to that malach, Rabbi Nachman is essentially forcing us to remember that even though Hashem has all those malachim, it wasn't like a typo, it wasn't a printing error that humanity was born. Somehow our avodah is worth more to Hashem in a certain sense, meaning our pulling away from our bahamias, our lowliness, our striving to remove ourselves from the experience of Adam, Afrim, and Adama, and to carry ourselves into the experience of Adam Elyon is more precious to Hashem, even though it's so limited, and even though we're so sullied by our averas, and even though etc., how difficult it is, and how insane we are, and how the Ruach Shtus, we explained all this and went into it at length, is more precious to Hashem than trillions of all of these malachim, each of which sing a trillion songs to Hashem. It's very beautiful. They don't have bechira. Good yantiv. It's nice. It's very beautiful. Anybody can do it if that's what you're programmed to do. That's not what's giving HaKadosh Baruch Hu the essence of the tainug that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has. Ke'esia Amar Yaakov, the pasuk says in the prophecy of Bilam, Ke'esia Amar Yaakov ma pa'al kel. Chazal darshan that the malachim will come to me and you, and they'll ask us, what's God doing? Because our mechitza is lifnim mimalachi asharis. La'asad level will take our rightful place as having been those who weren't perfect, but those who struggled with our imperfection and succeeded. In whatever degree we succeed. But the ikar is those who struggled, those who strove, those who dreamed, those who jumped, even though they knew that they would be pulled with gravity back down to the Aretz, to the Afrim and Adama, but who jumped nonetheless. So that's a big chizuk that Rabbi Nachman is sort of weaving into this. Sure, he's telling us it's so difficult to pull away from the Yetzer Hara, and like, why can't we just overcome it already, etc. All the lashonos I was using earlier. So then Rabbi Nachman throws at us this vision of this incredible angel to force us into remembering that we still give Hashem something that those angels never could. We are the crowning jewel of creation. And to be imperfect is to be a perfect human. If any person would experience total perfection, that vis-a-vis what Hashem needs from them, which is to be human, because that's what He created, not an angel, that would be an aspect of imperfection. It's this paradoxical thing. So in being imperfect, in being people that struggle with a Yetzer Hara, that is a Ruach Shtus, it's literally a spirit of insanity, those people who again are sticking their hands in the fire again and again and again and again, but they care about it and they're pained over it and they work on it and they're striving to overcome it, and in little shining moments they do manage to pull themselves away and lihio, to build this muscle of just being, etc., everything we spoke about. So that's mamish being perfect. That's such a great revelation of perfection. Wow. What we're giving to HaKadosh Baruch Hu by revealing His presence dafka in this low place. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants humans. Lo needn't Torah l'malachi asharis. The Torah wasn't given to angels, it was given to me and to you. So let's go a little bit further. So a person, forgetting might be an important thing, but a person needs to remember, chas v'shalom, that we don't pass through this whole world without really being conscious of why it is that we're here. The Chachamenu Zal Amru and Chazal describing Olam Haba teach us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu lahanchel chol tzadik b'tzadik shai olamos, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is destined to gift each and every tzadik, v'amechulim tzadikim, all of us, 310 worlds. The Yishar B'daito, says Rebbe Nachman, let a person only imagine Gedulas Olam Echad. Just take one of those worlds, right? 310 worlds. Imagine a world And again, it's all metaphoric. Of course, we don't believe that Hashem is giving us physical worlds. Whatever this means. But a world, v'kama batim yesh bai. How many cities are in the world? How many houses within those cities? V'kama chatzeros mubais, and all the different courtyards and all the different property. V'kama ayares, and all the forests and medinas and all the big continents and kingdoms. V'goydel shetach shel kol ha'olam, with the expansivity of a whole world. And all the different stars and all the different constellations, the galaxies, and again, in a way that all this would be meaningful to us, right? Right now, if you gave me a galaxy, I don't know what to do with it. I'm just a tiny person, right? But in as much as this would matter, imagine what Olam Haba is. That's one world, so to speak, one universe out of 310 universes that are given to us. We can't imagine what Olam Haba is. And so in accordance with that, keeping our mind and our eye on that, even though that's not why we serve Hashem, don't be like those, says the Mishnah and others, who serve their master to earn reward. That's not why we're in it. That's not why you and me are in this game, which is not a game. But it's a game in as much as this is the game of life. So our chevra, like we say all the time in these shiurim, our chevra are in it for the relationship. Yiras chet, fear of what the experience will do, not because chas v'shalom I'm going to get punished. It's not our conception, and not simply because I want to overcome this so that I can get reward, but because of the relationship. The relationship. That's the most important thing. We're building a kesher, we're building a relationship. Or yiras haroimamus, where we're overwhelmed by the overt experience of Hashem. So that's the madrigas that we generally speak about. But still there's value in having an eye, so to speak, on what Olam Haba is, for the purpose of then looking at the small little fleeting moments within which we can potentially lose, chas v'shalom, some of that experience, and to say, not I'm going to overcome this because I don't want to lose that, or I want to get Olam Haba, but rather in accordance with that. So what is that? I mean, this is a tainug, this is a pleasure. Is this really, not is this worth it? More than that, I'm trying to express something. It's not oh, this is not worth it because if I eat this, or if I look there, or if I do that, or if I say this, or if I think that, whatever it is, so then I'm going to lose out on all of that. Much more than that. It's that when we sensitize ourselves to what's out there, even if it's not ours, just in relation to what exists in the higher realms, then it's like, this is not even a pleasure. This is not even, like, what is this? I don't need this. So here Rabbi Nassan deepens this idea, and we'll just read through this and then we'll finish for today. It says Rabbi Nassan, Ki bereishis hadavar yesha legala se'emes b'shum oifen. In the beginning, up front, the truth can't be completely revealed. There's the ikra b'chira, and this is the only reason why there's true free choice. This that the true reality isn't completely overtly there in front of our eyes, easily accessed. I remember once being very bothered in my earlier days of getting into the study of Chasidus and Pnimius and Hashkafa and thinking about Yiddishkeit. And I remember, like it was yesterday, I remember shopping in, anybody who knows Ramat Eshkol, there's the supermarket there in Rehov Yamsuf called Mayan Alpayim, one of many. But the Ramat Eshkol Mayan Alpayim, and I was going and I was looking at different snacks, something I wanted to bring back to the dira, back to the dorm. And I was learning in Rabbi Brazil's yeshiva, Zivat Torah. And I remember there was this big, like, party bag of chips. I mean, yeshiva bachrim can't go for the little ones. You know, they're half filled with air where they come with 10 chips. That's not going to be adequate for a Thursday night. Everybody knows you know, the big bags, right? And right there on the bag is the price. There's the picture of the chips, right? Or like they call them here, crisps, that you can buy, and there's the price. And I thought to myself, this is how it should be. Meaning, it's so unfair that in Yiddishkeit, It's all we see, so to speak, is the chips, so to speak. But it doesn't come with a price tag on it. Meaning, if every time a person wanted, let's say a person struggling with kashrus, and a person wanted to eat something that's below their standard, they know that they're trying to keep, let's say, chalav Yisrael, whatever chumrah, whatever it is that they're trying to do, and there in front of them they see the food that they want to eat, and also the price tag. And they also see right in front of them what they're going to lose, and chas v'shalom, what the consequences of this is going to be. And I thought to myself, standing there in the supermarket, that's bechira, right? Meaning otherwise it's so unfair. Can you imagine if they never told you the price? So a person's just going to walk around the supermarket, fill the whole entire cart with the whole thing because there's no price tags on anything. That's not bechira. That's not free choice. Reb Nachman answers that question here. He says it wouldn't be feasible for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to put the price tag on the bag. Do you know why? Because then we wouldn't have bechira. Meaning if we would see the price, it's ke'ilu, the price was so disproportionate to the bag of chips in the mashal that it's $1 billion to buy this bag of chips. It's like, that's not bechira. But what do you mean? That's what you wanted? No. Here's the chips and here's the price. Well, shkoyach, but the price is completely disproportionate from the bag of chips. Says Reb Nachman, essentially, that's what he's saying over here. We'll try to read a little bit more. Says Reb Nachman, well, that's what it would be like if Hashem put the price in terms of what we lose, or let's use the tov, asay tov, more appropriately here, what we stand to gain. It wouldn't even be a question. Like a child, if a child knew the value of a pasuk chumash Rashi, if they knew the value of learning Lashon HaKodesh and really working at it, if they knew that would avail them a whole lifetime of access to Sfarim, which, okay, Baruch Hashem, pretty much everything is being translated now, but there are still Sfarim that you need to know Hebrew for, and they would know the tainug of being able to access, etc., etc. He would run, says Reb Nachman, on his hands and his feet into the classroom to be able to learn. Because he doesn't understand why it's important for him to know how to read a pasuk or to read a Gemara, let's say, he runs away from school. And the same is true for an adult. Again, if we would see with our eyes, I was using the mashal of the price tag on the bag of chips, but over here it's not exactly that, but we would see what we can get. What we can access if we just overcome, just to sit with the discomfort. Yeah, it's uncomfortable. That's what we're here for, to sit and to breathe deep and easy and to know that I don't need anything else. Even though my body feels like it does, but that's the beauty of knowing that that's exactly how my body ought to feel right now, and it's not going to die, and I'm okay. And the doing of a mitzvah, what it would avail us, he says there wouldn't be bechira then. Nobody would do an aveir in their life, and all we would do the whole entire day is running from mitzvah to mitzvah to mitzvah. And the taiva that a person thinks is taka pleasurable wouldn't even be considered a taiva in relation to the shashui, the tanuge, the pleasures, the incredible delight of Olam Haba ki yamba Olam Hazeh ha'aroyim mechusha gam ha'taiva gedolim is bateles k'shorei taiva gedolim izeh. Because even in this world we see that even a big taiva, when it is in relation to a bigger taiva, it's null. For example, if a person is sitting there and he's eating, let's say, something he's not supposed to be eating, or more than he knows he ought to be eating, or in a way that he ought not to be eating, and so on, and all of a sudden, in that minute, it becomes clear to him that if he runs to this and this place, $100,000, 100,000 pounds. Let's say, whatever, each person in their own financial situation, that's a decent amount of money, I think, for everyone, right? 100 grand. So you drop the piece of cake and you run, and it's not even a question. It's not difficult. You don't have to pull away, right? A bigger taiva overwhelms the smaller taiva. Mikol shekain yoiser bevadai. Afilu mayoiches beiza taiva shiyoyim ashlicha, whatever he's in the middle of, he would throw it away. V'hayorats b'chol koichelach tavayin rav kazeh, and you would go to grab these riches. Mikol shekain mayoraya hayin asik. If you would see even more than that, $1 million. Mikol shekain mayozeich l'shmei chelik echa me'elav v'ravav mikol hanigun sheyit arla asid. All the more so if a person would hear just one tiny little note of the trillions of notes coming out from one malach, of trillions of malachim, etc. So, is it really worth it? Is it really worth it? Kivi pashtus katnas dasa adam nidvale be'emesh shezeu tainig lecha v'lishtais? Crazy. Going back one line, ach ikra b'chira. So why do we have choice? And it's exactly not like I thought years ago, standing there in the supermarket aisle. The only reason we have Bechira is, again, because the price tag is not on the bag of chips. Because we cannot see. Adarabba, and on the contrary, we'll finish with this. In accordance with our limited consciousness, we think that this is pleasurable to eat and to drink, and to serve Hashem, and that's really difficult and it's challenging. This is our nisayon. To deal with the discomfort, because we don't see the truth. And by pushing through, and by being margal ourselves, like Rebbe Nachman says, accustoming ourselves to sit and simply to be. It will be revealed to us that the truth is, this is the pleasure, this is the good stuff, La'avodas Hashem, this is the tachlis, to serve Hashem. In the beginning, we have to hide that from a person. So we'll have free choice. In the end, we'll get the good stuff. In accordance with how much we struggle and suffer, and it's difficult and challenging. Agra, that's how much we earn the reward. And so I think this is an incredibly powerful piece, because we don't really, in our shiurim, we don't really speak about Olam Haba, and you understand, even here, we're not speaking about serving Hashem to get Olam Haba. That's not the point. It's not what we're speaking about. All we're saying is that in relation to higher experiences, it puts into perspective this worldly Olam Hazeh experiences that we're so compelled toward, that we're so addicted to. And Rebbe Nachman is saying, again, let's just go back to that line, and with this we'll finish. Ra'ui la'adam lahargalas atzmai lihiyos, that by accustoming ourselves, again, just to be, and it's difficult, and valuing our avodah, even though Hashem has all these special malachim, but we know that little bit that we're able to do, a little bit sur mirah, a little bit asay toiv, it's bringing Hashem tainug in a way that no malach ever could. In that moment, with the discomfort, but it's okay, I can sit with it. Olam Haba, we're channeling the light of paradise into this world. And in that moment, we're tasting the true tainug, the true goodness. The goodness of gadlus ha'adam, of dveikus with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, chazak v'amatz. Not sure if anybody was with me. Only saw one camera on. It makes it very difficult. Again, I know it's also annoying to have your camera on. Makes it so much easier for me in the future, if that's at all possible. But I hope that whoever was able to be with us enjoyed the shir. And lo yalimudu ha'ikar ela ha'maisa. Of course, the main thing is that we should be meriting to put it into practice to the best of our capacity. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu should help us be people that are connected in Olam Hazeh, to be connected to the Ruach of Olam Haba, Be'ezras Hashem. Be'ezras Hashem. Okay, amazing. Thank you again for joining. I'm wishing everybody the most wonderful, incredible day. Ashreinu, Ashreinu, Matoiv Chalkeinu. Ashreinu. We should only hear good news.